All right. With time approached, we are ready to begin this new Anyline webinar. Welcome everyone to the session. Thank you all so very much for joining us today. Hope you're having a great day wherever in the world you're joining from. I know we have people from around the world with us today. So again, thank you so much for your time today. Today, we're talking about AI-powered mobile fleet inspection with some great live demos and some great use case explanations talking about real-time data with VIN, license plate, and tire scanning. Lots of exciting stuff to get started on. And before we do, let's do a quick introduction to myself and my team members. My name is Mark Babin. I am the creative director at Anyline, and I'm joined by, again, two of my colleagues here, Hervig and Chris, as you see there. Chris is our head of US automotive sales and will be starting you off on the presentation. And Hervig's going to dive a bit more into details as our pre-sales engineer and facilitate that live demonstration that I know we're all looking forward to. Now, before we begin, a quick few housekeeping notes. We want to encourage questions during the session, and we're going to address them all at the end. So during the session, if you do have a question you would like to ask, hit that little Q&A button in the bottom of the screen, and you'll have a little pop-up window that will allow you to type your question into us. So feel free to type questions throughout the presentation. We'll address them all at the end. If you want to send that anonymously, go ahead and click that little send anonymously button, and we won't be able to see who you are if you're sending that question. Just keep in mind, if we do run out of time at the end, we have a lot of people in the session today, and we don't know who you are, it'll be hard to get back to you with an answer. So keep that in mind, but feel free to have the option. And secondly, as our last housekeeping point, Zoom has introduced some great translation and transcription features. You can show the captions button, that CC button down in the bottom of your screen. You can actually select the language you'd like to listen, or you can have the transcription be presented in. So if you're more comfortable listening and reading this presentation in your own language, your native language, please feel free to go ahead and do that. A great, nice feature from Zoom. All right, without further ado, enough from me. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Chris, and we'll get this presentation started.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks to everybody for joining today. Very excited to talk with you all about the incredible revolution that I believe is taking place right now with regard to the tools people are using in the automotive industry broadly, but especially within the fleet segment. But before we jump into any topics for today, some of you might not be as familiar with us. So who are we? Who is Anyline? Well, at a glance, Anyline is a market leader for mobile inspection solutions, right? We are AI-powered machine learning experts. And again, we live at the point of inspection. So when you think about how does Anyline fit into my fleet, how does it fit into the workflows? The goal is how can we take the users, whether it's a technician or a driver, and really enhance their ability to capture certain data in and around a vehicle, enrich that data, and get it back to the leaders who can actually use it to make either predictive maintenance decisions or strategic doing. So we thing or two. So we've got offices in Europe, the US, India. I like to joke that the sun never sets on the end. Say again, Mark?
Oh, you're all clear,
Chris. I heard somebody say something. Okay, excellent. As mentioned a little earlier, we are experts, right? So over 100 experts collectively, and we serve some of the largest Fortune 500 companies, and you can see a couple of the logos down here, some pretty reputable names that if you're in the US, you might be familiar with names like Discount Tire. Globally, tons of folks familiar with names like Continental, Michelin. And how do we do for those particular customers? Well, our solutions perform incredibly well. And again, they're trusted by these leaders to digitize and analyze the data from their vehicles for hundreds, quite literally hundreds of millions of vehicles every single year. You can see here with Discount Tire, for my folks who are here in the US, right? We were able to take a very manual, tedious inspection process and make it 4 times more efficient for them. For those in the EU side, you can see we've significantly reduced downtime for Krona, right? So again, pretty relevant for the fleet managers on this call today. But overall, again, we exist and we live to really try to enhance this workflow this data capture process, and again, to make that data more usable for the leaders to make more strategic decisions. Now, let's take a look at some quick stats. Collectively, there's 5.7 billion with a B, tires on the road today. Now, what we know, right, studies have shown that when those vehicles enter the garage, in most instances, 1 out of 4 tires is actually defective by the time it gets there for its service. So that could be its periodic oil change, that could be any other regular scheduled maintenance that needs to happen for that particular vehicle. But we know that in most instances, 1 out of 4 tires is actually going to be defective. Now, this is 230 billion euro or dollar, we could say, opportunity or problem, depending on how you look at this. And the other really key stats here that I want to draw everybody's attention to is really the bottom two, where 35% of issues in last mile delivery are related to tires. When I talk to the largest fleets, everybody says the exact same thing, right? Tires is the leading cause of or ERS, or emergency roadside repairs. And it's not a secret, right, that it is the second largest expense overall for fleet companies. So hopefully this helps to frame the context of why we're having this discussion. Why is it important that we actually dive a bit just the vehicle and specifically the tires within that vehicle. So, which are perfect to do frame this conversation a bit more with some of the trends that we are seeing shaping the industry. Surprise to anybody on this call, but it's the shift to EVs. And globally, we see it much faster in some markets as opposed to others. But what does that really mean, right? So what? If I'm moving my fleet today, right, and we all have goals or for move to we know is tires with EVs, in addition to the torque and simply the actual materials used, it's a softer rubber for those tires, is actually accelerating wear by up to 30%. We also know it becomes more complex, right? When we have and it differently across different vehicles, in many instances operating within the same fleets, it introduces a layer of complexity to the fleet managers like that I'm sure they didn't exactly want before. And the last thing here is not surprisingly, but we do know that more regular self-checks can reduce uneven wear. And when we think about how do we extend the life of that asset, right, the tire in this instance, really making sure that we can catch uneven wear at the onset is critically important, because as everybody on this call probably knows, once it gets to a certain point, we are past the point of return, and now we are replacing rather than rotating, and replacing is much more expensive than rotating a tire out. The next trend we'll dive into is labor and staff shortages. Now, I'm on site with folks and we talk about this. It is no secret that there is a shortage of skilled labor, right? It is very difficult to find technicians. And this is not actually confined only to the fleet segment, but this is really the automotive industry as a whole, right? And there's an interesting statistic that I do like to share, right? The average age of a technician, at least in the US, is 57, okay? So this is an aging workforce. We have new entrants coming in to replace those aging out, but not quite fast enough to keep up with the demand. So all that to say, we have to find ways to do more with less. We also know that wages are increasing, so labor is getting more expensive. That's a great thing for workers. But again, it drives us as leaders of organizations to think about how valuable is that employee's time? How valuable is that technician's time, for example? And how can we keep them turning wrenches as opposed to engaging in maybe tedious, but necessary sometimes tasks of data capture and things of that nature? And then, of course, we want to try to make the work enjoyable as well so that we can actually, retain these employees, and empowering folks to be able to do these sort of checks in a faster, more efficient way is certainly a way that we can get them back to the work that they actually enjoy as well, which is in most cases turning wrenches. And the last thing that I'll highlight here is really just overall the costs. Again, not a secret, I don't think, to anybody on this call, but inflation is very real. Fuel in many areas of the world has gone up quite significantly, and in almost all areas of the world, insurance has gone up tremendously. And so, again, it forces us as leaders to think about what are the costs that are controllable and how can we actually manage those or reduce those to ultimately help the bottom line. Of course, tires being a key focus of that, and again, that's going to be a key focus. And I'll tell here, but obviously people have Excel spreadsheets that they're looking through every day. Those types of processes ultimately slow organizations down and make them less effective, right? And so what can we really do, or what does it mean? Well, there's some hidden costs baked into all of this, right? One of those costs is simply the unplanned downtime. Annually, this is over $3 billion in the industry, the cost to fleets. So tremendous cost. There's also some other hidden costs, though, that I think not everybody thinks about immediately when they think about the challenges that are kind of going on, or some of the trends within the industry. One of those being fraud as well, or theft. We know that vehicles actually do get lost or stolen, right? I say lost with some air quotes there. They do get stolen. And we also know that tires get stolen. And so when we don't have an efficient way to track those assets, again, we run the risk of incurring serious costs. And the last thing I'll draw attention to is just compliance. Compliance is obviously important for a number of reasons. But when we think about the true cost, especially in some markets, and I'll point one out in particular for any folks in the UK, you would all be well aware of this, but having a compliance violation for your tires could cost you over 2,000 pounds, right? And that's for each individual tire. So imagine a tractor trailer combo there, and how many tires could potentially be non-compliant. And it doesn't take a mathematician to deduce that that could add up pretty quickly. So at the core, what we've identified in our discussions with customers at this point, being on site, is that we really have a lack of critical tire data. The reality is tires are not typically regularly checked by trusted technicians who actually have the expertise. When we do have drivers doing these inspections, oftentimes they're very pressed for time, which unfortunately leads people to occasionally cut corners. And then also we know that the reality is our drivers are not typically qualified, nor do they usually have the tools to even be able to perform reliable and accurate inspections. And that really kind of leads into the last point, is that without a way to have a reliable and accurate inspection, the data that fleet managers are looking at today is simply incomplete, right, or inaccurate. And we all know, right, there's the old saying, garbage in, garbage out, right? When we have bad data, it's very hard to make good decisions. So what can Anyline do? Well, this is just a snapshot here. And again, I'll pass it over to Hervig in just a bit so he can actually dive into some of these solutions of some of the things that we can actually capture using nothing more than a mobile phone, right? The core value proposition of Anyline is tied to that. And again, I'll let my colleague Hervig talk to you a little bit more about our technology and our software and how it actually works. But here on your screen, you can see just a couple things, right? If I look at something as simple as a VIN number, imagine writing that down for the folks who are still doing that today with pen and paper, right? Well, why would we do that when we could just OCR scan the VIN, the windshield, or use the barcode as well to capture that information? And that's just to initiate workflow. But there's a lot more, especially when we talk about tires, looking at the size of the tire, looking at the make and the model of the tire. And of course, critically important, looking at the tread depth. Yeah, multiple today. And solve the benefits that's important to highlight when we talk about this, right? It's not just unique to Anyline, but really, truly, we know that businesses who are using digital tools are more likely to experience revenue growth. And I think you could all probably imagine why. Secret that, you know, think on your phone to move much faster. And of course, that leads into saving time and reducing costs further, right? And again, we've already highlighted the efficiency gains. And again, I'll let Hervig showcase that a bit in just a second. And of course, the last thing here, which again, we already talked about a bit also, but it's really staying compliant. And compliance, not just for the sake of compliance, but also for the sake of safety, right? When we think about being able, for example, in the US to detect, or globally, right, to detect recalled tires instantly, right, or non-compliant tires instantly, the risk we can mitigate is tremendous, right? And so, without further ado, I think I've spoken more than enough. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my colleague Hervig to talk a little bit more about what this workflow actually looks like.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm diving right into it. So first of all, I would like to let you know, Anyline is not an end-to-end solution. So we are not having an application that you just take over and implement. Furthermore, we have an SDK and a cloud API. So basically, when you already have an existing workflow where you have any fields where you have manual data input, you can just add the Anyline scanning capabilities at these stages and use our scanner to extract those strings automatically. Okay, this said, it's also up to you how you set up the Anyline products. So our standard workflow that works for most of our clients and for most of our prospects is that they first have to identify the vehicle. We do that either via the license plate or the vehicle identification number, quickly scanned. Then the next step is often optional. You can identify the driver, the technician, or even service personnel that are taking care of cleaning the car to capture their ID information via a national ID, driving license, a passport. And then we go further down. So next step is the tires. First, we want to identify what tire is on the car. So since the side of the tire, you have a lot of information. It is all black on black. It's not easy to find certain strings, certain information that you need. So our approach is to just make a photo of the sidewall and automatically get the age of the tire size, the model of the tire, and the make of the tire. There will be more information to come. As Chris said before, tires are becoming increasingly more complex, so we will build up and add more and more information that absolutely doubt-free identifies a tire. So now we know what is the vehicle, we know who is driving it, and now we just want to see, is the tire still fit for the road or not? This is the usual process that we go through with our fleet customers. Now a little bit more to the technology of Anyline. So as Chris said before, we are turning smartphones or even tablets into tire diagnostic tools, into scanners and tire diagnostic tools. You don't need any gauges anymore. You don't need any additional hardware. You get the SDK on the phone itself. It is directly connected to your backend system, and there is an immediate data transfer. So whatever you scan is immediately in your backend system. To describe the scanning a little bit more is we are capturing the data and we're using an AI-based algorithm in the background that reads out what we are scanning. Then all the data comes into the backend system, and from there you can make immediately PDF reports to send a visualized version of the data to your end clients. You can enrich your dashboards to immediately see how is the health status of the vehicle and the tires. And you can also, of course, add it to with any other additional data sources from your existing system. This would be basically how the Anyline technology is built up in the background. Okay, now we go to the tire sidewall. As I've described, we are currently extracting four values, more to come. There will be run flat information, seasonal markings, OE markings. This will all come in 2025. And now we move on to the process of how the tire tread scanning works. So this shows very well, this little animation on the right side, it shows very well because we do have a few quality drivers. So we need to be in the right distance to the tire and we need to be in the right angle to the tire. Best is a straight angle and the distance needs to be capturing the tire full in the image without cutting anything off. So this is quite easy. We have also user guidance features that are guiding untrained personnel to get a very easy process, good user experience, and first and foremost, fast and accurate results. Now we move on to the tire tread. So we now know what tire do we have on the car. Tire tread works a little bit differently. There's a different technology in the background, how the data points are being captured and read out. The process is fairly simple though. You only have to move your device over the running surface of the tire. By doing so, we are making a small video, and this video is capturing 100,000 measurement points within an area of 20 centimeters of the tires. This is currently processed on the cloud because it would just overwhelm the processing power of a smartphone. So it takes maybe up to 5 seconds until you receive the results on your smartphone. However, when implementing the solution, you can just scan one tire after the other whilst the results are being brought in the background. So you don't have to wait for any results. You just scan each tire of the car in a row and the results appear automatically on your phone as well as in the backend. So now we have talked about capturing the data, automatically sending it to the backend, visualizing the captured data points. What's very, very interesting, especially for a fleet management use case, is if you're scanning your car once a week, once a month, you get dynamic tire condition data. So at any point of time, we know how quickly does this tire wear down, which allows us to make very, very exact predictive maintenance calculations. So we can assume if a certain vehicle continues to drive the same way, the tires will wear out in, let's say, 1 year, 3 months, and 2 weeks. This enables, of course, a fleet manager to purchase the right set of tires at the best possible time. Because we all know every millimeter of rubber is a lot of money, especially if you own a lot of fleet vehicles. So exchanging the tires at the exact right moment is very, very valuable. Okay, now this is done with the theory. I will just hop over into our little demo environment and I will meet you there. Hello again. This is our little demo wall here. At first, we want to capture the vehicle. So we have put up a little license plate here. And this can be done already within the Anyline Showcase app, which, by the way, is free to download on the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store. For the license plate recognition, which, by the way, it works the complete same way for the vehicle identification number or for your passport or for your driving license. So today, we will only show you how to scan the license plate. We have this little detection rectangle. All we have to do is put it to the license plate, and you see within a snap of a second, you receive a result. This is now a mocked up license plate. So with real license plates, you will also get the country code. Okay, now we have captured the vehicle. We now know which fleet vehicle we are dealing with. We can now also scan our driving license so we know who is going to take the car. Next up is we want to understand what kind of tire we are having mounted. So for this, we have another demo application here. This is, we want to take the tire sidewall. We want to take a picture here. Of course, we have to allow the camera. So now this is the user guidance feature I mentioned before, just simulates the tire. What we have to do is we just match the blue ring with the tire. And when I click to continue, you see, we are in the perfect orientation to get a good picture for scanning. Now we use the photo. It is being sent to our cloud. It's being calculated, and within 2 seconds, even less, you get the result. As you see, we are having a Bridgestone tire. It is 4 years old. We have the model, which is a Turanza T005, and we have the tire size, including speed and load index. And of course, you get a picture of the tire as well. So it gives you also a status quo image of the tire condition, maybe the rim condition if it's there as well. And for example, if what Chris mentioned before as well, you are afraid the tires might get lost on the road, you can make a picture after the vehicle comes in to make sure still the same tire that the vehicle went out with. Okay, now we know the car, we know the tires. Last missing piece is we want to know the condition of the tread. So we have another application here. You will see as soon as I click here to open the scanner, a torchlight will be activated on the device, because this way we can scan in any day or time of the day, in any condition, because the torchlight is giving us enough lighting to get an accurate scan. Okay, now we just have to move the device over the tire until it is being recognized. And you see this little gray overlay here. What we have to do is we match it with the right tire shoulder, the left tire shoulder, no matter which side you begin scanning. So we have matched it. I'm tapping the screen, and now I'm having a slow video. There is even a number counting down to show you how quickly you should scan the tire. So 5 to 6 seconds is completely sufficient for a good tire tread scan. Right now, all those 100 measurement points of a larger zone like that are being calculated on the cloud. So you can imagine we are capturing 100,000 measurement points in an area-based scanning approach versus our traditional approaches to measure the tread depth is just a punctual measurement, only one. And now we are having the results. Basically, up here we get an average result of all those 100,000 measurement points. Usually, most used is the minimum result, because we want to know if there is maybe a slight break or some damage on the tire where the profile is a little bit lower. This is what counts in the end. So we get 3 regional results for left, middle, right. Getting 3 regional results also helps us to give you indications if there is a certain condition with the tire. Some conditions, they make a certain treadmill pattern. For example, if one side is much lower than the other side, we could identify that and we could give you an indication. Please check the axis of this vehicle. There might be a wheel misalignment issue here. Or if the middle value is much higher or much lower, could be a tire pressure issue. We can also send a warning to please check the tire pressure. What I wanted to show you more is I mentioned those 100,000 measurement points. This is something what we call a heat map, and it's a visualization of all the points that we have captured on the tire. I'm zooming in here a little bit more, and you will see it's all little squares. Each square is a measurement reference, all together around 100,000. And this brings us to the end of our Swift little demo. You can see how quickly I can capture the tire data, vehicle, tire data, and the condition done in a couple of minutes.
All right, Hervik, thank you very much for that great demo. Always nice to see the technology in action. We did get a few messages about maybe some spotty internet. We apologize for that in advance if you did experience that. Not to worry, however, the recording of this presentation will be sent to you in the hours following the webinar. We'll get that out as soon as we can to you, and you'll be certain that you'll have the quality if you did miss any information there. If you did miss something, perhaps you want to ask a question, now is the time to go ahead and do that. If there are any questions about what you saw or heard today, please type them in the Q&A box and we will get started. So we do have questions in already, and Herving, I'm going to come to you with this first one. Question asks, what's the capability requirements on the mobile phone to capture the information? Is there a megapixel count that we should have as a minimum?
Usually we can answer this a little bit broadly. Our solution works perfectly fine for most of the phones that have been produced in the last, let's say, 5 to 6 years. There is a few models, of course, that are even older that work fine. I also get very, very good readings with an iPhone 10, which by now is quite antique. And we are also further developing the solution, optimize it for lower performing hardware, because we do know in the workshops you cannot often get the best performant phones.
Great. Hervik, thank you very much. Another one for you coming on this, and this is a question we get quite often after we do the demo. How does the technology work with dirty, muddy, or perhaps even snowy? I can throw that in there. We're in winter now. Tire sidewalls. Looking at the tire sidewall here specifically, when it's dirty or muddy. How does
I'm happy to answer the question for also the tire tread, actually. So a little bit of dirty, muddy tire sidewall does not hurt us at all. It even in some cases gives us a benefit because the sidewall is less reflective and the dirt, it does give us a little bit more of a contrast. So actually that's not harmful at all. For the tire tread, well, if the tire tread is completely stuck with mud and dirt and snow, then we can't read it, but you also can't do it with any other measurement method. Then laser won't work, gauge won't work. However, we eliminate the upperst and lowest points. So if more than half of the area of the 20 centimeters are free of mud and dirt, you will get a very fine, accurate reading.
Great. And I also think it's worth noting having that section-based scan gives you much more opportunity to have that. The area is essentially like a barcode and have that be read a little bit more clearly. Hervik, thank you very much for that. One last question here against kind of relating to that. Will the tire scan identify a condition like cupping? Now, I guess this comes back to how that data is interpreted, right, Hervik?
I must say my English is not sufficient. I don't know what cupping means, but I guess it is an issue that the tire can have. It's like a bulb that comes out of the tire. This is a request we have been given a few times already. Currently, this is not covered, but we are happy to look into it. We've also heard about partners looking into it. It's definitely something that the market wants, and within AI, nothing is impossible. So we're happy to delve deeper if we get the right opportunity to do so. But this is maybe that we can explore in more detail in a breakout session. I would be happy to.
Great. Hervik, thank you very much for that. And it is worth noting, if you do have a unique case where perhaps you want something specific identified, this is exactly where we'd want to be in touch with you directly. So you'll see a QR code on your screen. I'd highly encourage you, if you do have a unique use case question, go ahead and scan that QR code and you'll be able to book a meeting with one of our expert professionals, Hervik and his team, and have those issues addressed. And we can look at your specific use case or the specific ways in which you want to leverage the technology. That's exactly the opportunity to go ahead and do that. So again, just scan that QR code on the screen and book a call with our team. No, of course, no obligation. Let's just answer more of your questions and make sure that you have all the information possible to make an informed decision. Great, moving on. Chris, I'm going to come to you on this next one. I think it's probably more affiliated to you. Are you aware of your solution being used with AssetWorks fleet software?
I'm not particularly familiar with AssetWorks. I can tell you there are some other fleet softwares that have integrated Anyline solutions and other, even digital vehicle inspection solution providers that have also integrated our solutions. So I would recommend if you use one today, by all means, let us know, and we can let you know if that's a partner that's already on the list, that's already done the integration, where it's available to you. And if it's not, the great news is it's a very simple integration. We haven't really talked too much about that, but really, truly does not take long, right, for these solution providers to be able to integrate this and actually make the solution available to you. So we're happy to talk with you and jointly with your solution providers as well to make the solution accessible.
Great. Thank you, Chris. And Chris, I'll come back to you on this other one. Will it become available for truck tires? A great great question talking about commercial and truck tires.
Yes. So yes, absolutely. The great news of how we do things again is we look at all types of tread patterns. Now, I will say our solution is certainly tailored to passenger tires at the moment, and it will be for I would say, the next few months. That being said, there are some commercial tires we can read incredibly well. Hervig can probably talk a bit more to that, specifically trailer tires. And so if you have, again, a specific use case in mind with a specific type of tire, please let us know. We've done quite a bit of testing, extensive testing at this point, and we can help to kind of guide you to success in that regard.
Anything additional, Hervig, you'd like to add on that?
Absolutely. Chris explained it all perfectly well already. So trailer tires, basically all the commercial tires that have more linear, easy grooves that look more like passenger tires, scan perfectly well already. We are currently working on all the other tires, drive tires, steer tires. So there will be a next announcement coming in 2025. We are not too far off, but I don't want to make any spoilers yet.
Absolutely, yeah. Well answered. Great. Chris, I'm going to come to you. We have a question about Sun Auto, our use case with Sun Auto, a well-known brand in the US. The question asks that he read about us in Sun Auto. Chris, can you give us a little bit of the explanation on that use case? Not to go too much into depth. We can share more resources on that, of course. But Chris, maybe just give us a quick overview of where and how it's being used in Sun Auto.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think one of the great things that we see with our tread depth reading is it's not really confined to one particular use case or segment of the automotive industry, right? And so today our discussion is primarily focused on fleet, but clearly some are familiar with the others, right? Like the Sun Autos of the world, the Discount Tires of the world, which are tire retail shops. We even have Michelin, right? So tire OEMs. Specifically, when we talk about tire retail, in most instances, this is technicians who are going to be the users in this case, right? Who are actually conducting their in-bay inspections, so their MPIs or their multi-point inspections, and using Anyline to be able to, again, expedite the data capture process and also capture better data. The really neat thing is there's some really great things we can do to then re-present that data back to the customer in ways that they have never seen before. So if you'd like to learn more about any of the other use cases, by all means, I would highly suggest we get some time and we can dive in again to your particular use case as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great use case and a lot of great technology that we demoed today on display in that use case, which is fantastic to see that being used across the Americas. Great, moving on. Do you have an app or I suppose technology that reads vehicle registration document data? If yes, do you read Italian vehicle documents? I think this is a very specific use case I think that we'd be interested in talking more about, but Hervig, let me just touch on a little bit more of the variety of different
Absolutely. I tried to answer the question briefly, Giorgio. If you want more details, please scan the QR code. Let's have a session to discuss it in detail. We only have a solution at the moment for German vehicle registration certificates. We designed it for a specific customer. But Anyline, working with an AI technology, we have the capability to still train new products. So if this is a big use case and very important to you, please book a session to us and we can discuss ways to train, customize, and tailor a solution for your specific needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Book that call. Let's look at your use case specifics and find that right solution for you. Thank you, Hervig. A great question coming in. Tires are basically in car mounted, and that's a great observation. We did our demonstration here on a tire that's not car mounted. The question is, how can you rotate the phone inside part of the tire? So I guess looking at within the wheel well and looking at when the tire is mounted to a vehicle, how does that work different than how we showed, Hervig?
This is really a great question. Honestly, it's something that we have deeply investigated and changed over the last 1 or 2 years a lot, because of course it is a different handling, but it works perfectly well. We don't do it between the car wheel and the tire, we do it underneath the chassis. And we do it in a way that we don't even look on the screen. We have implemented audio guidance, so the telephone will beep if you are out of the optimal range. And we have implemented vibration guidance as well, because sometimes you're in a workshop, it's way too loud, you can't hear the beeping, so the thing vibrates a lot as well. This way, you can make just the same quality of scans like scanning loose tires. Yes, works perfectly fine. I can show you in a breakout session.
Yeah, a great opportunity to have that breakout session and show how we would do it on a mounted tire. I think that's a great example there. Perfect. Good. Moving on, with all the measurement points you're able to detect, as we talked about, those 100,000 different measurement points, are we able to detect perishing within the tread? So I guess diminishing of that tread. I suppose over time, if it's measured continuously, we would notice that trend and that would show, right?
Yes, of course. This is what I mentioned before, where our data insights kick in. The more often you scan the same tire, you could also scan, for example, the odometer to understand the mileage that the car drove in between. We can make very accurate predictions on your average tread wear of this tire. So if you continue driving in a similar behavior, we can very easily predict when you will have to purchase a new tire. I hope this answers the question correctly. If not, please let me know.
Yeah, let's have that conversation. And perhaps it's a really good opportunity, Hervig, maybe to talk about our insights and analytics solutions as well, which we didn't demo today. We have those in other webinars and in lots of resources, which we're happy to share with you. But Hervig, maybe just a quick overview of our insights and analytics solutions.
Quick overview of the insights. Yes, so basically all the data that you scan, we store, and we can connect to each other. And we also have a few lookup functions. One that's particularly interesting for the States, I would say, when you're scanning your sidewall or you're scanning the DOT of the tire, we have a function that immediately warns you if this tire has been recalled. There is always some recalls where the tire is not being safe for usage on the street anymore. So you would get immediately a warning. This is just one point. But when we, for example, connect the tire sidewall data with the tire tread data and the mileage, and we scan that once a month over a year, we can make very, very interesting calculations on what your average tread wear is. We are also talking with some OEMs where they want to start testing which specific tire is best for which certain road. So they enable geolocations, they see where the tire is driving, they make a scan before and afterwards, and to find out which rubber fits best for which road. But there's endless possibilities. So this is something where we count on your ideas and we like to make it happen.
Great. And just a clarification on a previous question, we were referring to, I guess, identifying cracks in the tread. So obviously we can measure the tread depth. How are we at measuring damage and identifying damage or cracks?
This brings me back to a question that has been asked before, is currently not covered. So we are currently not detecting cracks, but we can look into it. So we can measure the sidewall, we can measure the running surface of the tire, And it is possible for our technology to also inspect such damages in the future. However, we would be in the very beginning to developing such a solution. So we would need to start from scratch, understanding what are the categories of damages, getting image material to each of those categories, and start training our neural networks.
Yeah, and this would be a great example to see what kind of maybe examples you're working with, and we can start with that conversation with you. So again, if you do have a use case that you want us to look into a bit more, or maybe we want to see where our solution fits into your workflow, make sure to book that call with that QR code on the screen. We'll get in touch and have that conversation in that private call. We can discuss your use case more in depth. All right, moving on. We have a few questions left. Let's get to them. Do you have any plans to be able to use TPMS sensors for air pressure, which is obviously super important? I know TPMS is a topic that comes up quite a bit. Chris, I know this came up a lot at our recent event at SEMA. It was a lot of conversations. Can you touch on the TPMS sensor topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that so first off, we don't do tire pressure, right? I always have to distinguish that, right? We can look at a tire to determine if there are indicators of irregular wear that would lead us to determine that tire was over or under inflated. Now, that being said, we do have some partners who have actual TPMS sensors that even in some cases go inside of the tire. So we do partner with some of those organizations. And within their mobile apps, you can use Anyline to measure the tread depth of your tires. So it's a great combination because what you will always need to do is have a tool or a sensor to be able to measure the pressure of that tire. What we've seen over time is vehicles have gotten, again, with the push to electric vehicles and just in general, vehicles have gotten much smarter than they ever were before. My car tells me now which of my tires are low. So the sensors are there, and in many instances, the fleet manager can actually see that as well in real time, right? So not something that we look to do, but again, there are solutions out there that can help you do that, and they can be used in conjunction with Anyline, right? Absolutely, I would say it's not something we do specifically, but we can certainly support those use cases either through partners, or through looking at the irregular wear of the tire.
Yeah, great point. And then again, just to add on, if you do want to learn more about who we're partners with and maybe some of the names that we work with that we can't share here, go ahead and book that call, and we're happy to have those discussions more in depth and perhaps find that perfect match for the solution you want to put together. All right, I'm seeing an end to the questions. That was a nice, healthy stretch there. Thank you all so very much for those questions. Hopefully we answered them appropriately for you and satisfied what you were hoping to achieve. If you do have questions you want addressed that are, again, specific to your use case, do go ahead and book that call. That's what it's there for. And we're happy to have those conversations. No obligation on booking a call. It's just a conversation with us to understand your use case more specifically. So do take advantage of that. As I mentioned, if you do have any last minute questions, throw them in now. This will be recorded and sent to you following this presentation. So if you did miss a section, you came later, you want to share it with a colleague or a future team member, this will be recorded and sent to you. So you'll get it in your inbox and you'll have that asset to use at your disposal. But it looks like that's the end of our questions and the end of our session today. So thank you all so very much for joining us today. It was great having you on the webinar. Chris and Hervig, thank you so much for joining me. And we'll see you all on a webinar very soon in the coming year. Have a great end of the year, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you all.